Welcome to the Multifamily Investor Nation podcast. I'm your host, Whitney Elkins Hutton, Director of Investor Education here at PassiveInvesting.com. And I'm excited to be joined today by John Wells. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Whitney.
Yes, yes. Well, John, I'm so excited to talk about your property, the Sullivan, 130 units in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. But before we dive into the details of that project, tell us a little bit about yourself first, how you got into multifamily real estate, and where you're at today.
All right, thank you. Glad to, and thanks again for having me. Uh, like Whitney said, I'm John Wells. We are based out of Charleston, South Carolina. My wife and I, we been married about 7 years, got three little kids, all under 5 years old. And my background is in originally in big box retail and actually multifamily. I grew up in multifamily. My mom was a real estate developer in Dayton, Ohio. And after big box retail, I went into residential real estate about a decade ago, and then multifamily shortly after that.
Awesome, awesome. Well, let's dive into the details of the Sullivan, 130 units in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. And for those of you guys who didn't pick up on it, Mount Pleasant is what, a suburb of Charleston, right? Did I get that right?
That's right. Yep, that's absolutely right. It's a very nice, expensive, affluent suburb of Charleston, South Carolina. So we're extremely blessed to be in Mount Pleasant. These deals very rarely come up, and to get them to pencil and actually be able to make a deal work out of it, extremely rare. So lightning has actually struck 3 times for us in Mount Pleasant. So we're pretty lucky there. But yeah, it's
Awesome.
130 doors in Mount Pleasant, in the lower Mount Pleasant or South Mount Pleasant, which is closest to the bridge to downtown Charleston. And they are all considered single family attached townhomes. And we bought them for a range between 250 to $270,000 a door.
Well,
So
tell me, okay, so, we were talking before the show that there's two properties here that you combined into the portfolio and you closed them at two different times, one in November 2022 and the other one in April 2023. Let's start off with, what was the combined purchase here?
that I don't know off the top of my head. I would have to look that up. I'd have to do some math on the air. If you want me to do that, I can, but it usually doesn't make for good air. But um, I'll tell you why it got split up into two deals. Is that okay? So essentially, it's really interesting. The last seller that we purchased from in April actually developed the whole land in the 80s, and he sold off 79 out of the 130 to another company. And so we bought that portion first from that company, and then he kind of sat back and watched how that transaction went. And then we were fortunate enough to be able to do a transaction with him for the rest of the 51.
Okay, so it sounded like he was kind of like testing the waters to see if you guys are
Yeah,
going to be reputable buyers. So does I just some quick back in the napkin math, does about 30 million, 33 million sound
that
about
sounds
correct?
about right. Yep.
Okay, yeah, if we're at 252 a door, I think that puts us just a hair under 33 million. All right. So how did you find this property?
Great question. So we did a workshop here in Charleston with a bunch of real estate agents, local realtors, and someone signed me up to do it. My wife's in charge of acquisitions, so I drug her along reluctantly. But it's funny when you do these sort of things, always something amazing comes out of it. So someone connected us to a local lender who was going to present at the same workshop that we were presenting at. We connected. They said, we really don't do syndications ever, so we probably won't be able to work together. And at the end of it, I said, I'm going to do a syndication with you. We're going to do it. He's like, I'm open to it. Let's figure it out. So we actually placed some capital from another deal with their bank. I really had a great I liked his energy and vibe. Just wanted to see what it was like. Always trying to develop banking relationships. So we put some money with the bank. It's a small local bank called First Capital, and they just were over the moon with that deposit. And they took us out to dinner at a fancy downtown restaurant or lunch with the bank president, the head of commercial lending, and the banker. And we just, got to know each other. And the bank president said, I may have a deal you might be interested in. And one of our clients, it's kind of, he's a dog that caught the car type thing. And it's a little bit too big for his britches. And we ended up had the introduction and went from there and it made it work. So it was incredible what came out of that workshop.
So you went to a workshop, met a lender who said, "Oh, by the way, we're not going to do a syndication ever." By the end of the workshop, you're doing a syndication. He takes you out to dinner. Somebody else finds the deal, and then they can't close on the deal, and then you get the deal.
That's right. Yeah, through a
Oh
banking
my gosh,
relationship. Yeah,
that's
it was
awesome! It's all
incredible.
about relationships, right?
That's
So,
right.
so were you guys? It sounds like you were the only buyer in the mix. Were there other buyers in the mix that were looking at this deal?
So the bank's client was the buyer. So he actually put it under contract and attempted to take it down. He just couldn't find the right partners and really wasn't experienced in this area to take it down. So he ended up assigning the contract to us. We came up with a fair price and worked through that. So that's how it got to us.
Okay, and how long did that take between like finding the deal and getting it under contract?
So it was really fast. I'd say a couple weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, we move really fast. So we do our due diligence and get brokers' feedback or whoever feedback within 24 hours, and get our preliminary underwriting done, and then attempt to submit an LOI if we're going to pursue it within a day. So
Okay. All right. So what kind of, and so this is the interesting thing. So it was already under contract. So did you have to go back to the seller and renegotiate the contract at all, or were you on the other buyers using the other buyers' terms since the contract was decided?
yeah, so yeah, it did get a little dicey there. So we had their terms. We did have to renegotiate the terms because they weren't set out to our standards. And at the end of it, we did renegotiate and on the price. And really, unfortunately, the person that signed the contract, it came out of their end instead of the seller because they were not willing to come down anymore. But just to make the deal work, we don't like to, split hairs or anything, but just to make the deal work, that's what it had to take, and they ended up doing it. So
So did the timeline restart? I think this is where I'm going. Like, did you restart due diligence period, closing period, all that?
yeah, so we did have they had used 30 days. We still had 30 and 30 left in the contract. So it was plenty of time for us to put it together and make sure we did plenty of our due diligence and bring in equity and take it down.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the due diligence. Let's start with the physical due diligence. And you did say this is like a Class A area. Was this a Class A property?
No, so I would say it's exactly what we're looking for. It's probably a B or C asset. It's 1980s vintage. So I'd call it B. They're nice townhouses, but it's in an A area, and that's exactly what we look for is a B or C asset with a value add component in an A or a B area to really get that pop when we reposition the asset. So yeah, so you're asking about due diligence. We went through due diligence. We inspect every door we go into with an inspector, roofs, inside and out. We pull it all apart, do phase one environmentals, everything you can think of to see. Really, the question is, why shouldn't we buy this deal? Is all we're asking ourselves, and trying to poke holes into it and figure out where the weakness is in the deal. And the thing that came up during due diligence was the roof ages. And we had anticipated some more roofs, but we actually found more roofs were needed to be done than what was originally stated. So that's why we had to go in and ask for a reduction. And they agreed to that.
Okay. And so that was the only surprise on due diligence?
I think so. I'm trying to remember, like you said earlier, 6 months is like infinite now. So I don't believe anything other came up. We had some, really tax allocation questions that we had to talk about and work through with the seller and their counsel. But other than that, um, it was pretty straightforward.
What about the financial due diligence on the property? Were rent rules aligned, tenants in the right place, paying the right amount of rent? Like, was all that in line?
Yeah, well, for the most part, we had a leasing agent that was on site, third party that actually signed herself a super low rent for 3 extra years before we took over the asset, which was kind of disappointing, and it disappointed the seller too that they did that. But financially, yeah, the rent rolls. We kind of put these rent rolls together. Almost all our properties, it seems like, are from mom and pop sellers, which is seems to become our bread and butter. And we love them too because every time we buy these assets, they're always under market rents. So, and 100% occupied, 100% collections almost. And that's what they're worried about. They'd rather take way less than market rent but be able to collect it all and stay 100% full. So we can go in from day one and start readjusting the deal, the asset. So that was the case here. We had to really put together their own rent roll essentially. I mean, it's kind of like if I remember right, I believe it was on paper.
Uh, did you use
So
AI to scan it in? I learned that new trick yesterday. I
yeah,
was talking to somebody else.
yeah.
You take all the paper rent rolls and use AI and scan it in. How cool is that?
That
Uh,
is.
so okay, so it sounded like you actually had like one probably part of the business plan, right? Below value rents, you're gonna go in. Are you gonna do any updates to the property in order to push rents further, or are you just gonna raise rents to market rent as is?
Well, what's great is we could do that without even investing money into it, but we always do like to add value. We're putting about $1.5 million into this deal. We've done about 80% of the CapEx already. We painted the exteriors of the property, so it was all brick, red and brown brick with vinyl on some of them. Some of them had wood and just real old faded black shutters. And these are nice houses in a really nice area. So we whitewashed all the brick. We put up wood board and batten shutters, which is like a real southern shutter, and carriage lighting. It looks really phenomenal on the exterior. New fencing for the residents, so privacy fencings. They all have their own little backyards. We're doing some work to the playgrounds, and we opened up a fence to right next door is actually a brand new A class with shopping right next door and an REI store. So we opened up a fence. They had already poured a sidewalk all the way to our asset, but we had a fence in between that sidewalk and us. So the shopping center wanted us to have, walk through. It opens up right to a beautiful pond with a fountain and the REI store and all the shopping and restaurants and walking paths. So all we did was take the fence out, a walkway, and it's another great amenity that they get to enjoy, and we don't have to expense. So
Did you do any interior upgrades? Was that in the business plan?
yeah. Yeah, we did it. We do interiors. So, they had white appliances. We went to stainless, went to mid-grade countertops, so granite or sometimes quartz, and some new flooring. So um, new flooring and carpet and some fixtures and paint. So just a light value add
Okay.
as units return. So we would offer a renewal. Half of them would take the renewal. The other half would say, I can't afford this. And the renewal is always a little bit below market still. But if they didn't take the renewal, then we would go in, do our light value add, and bring it up to market.
Okay. And okay, so I'm really curious, right? So you have this value add plan, no major, surprises on the physical side of the due diligence, just a couple like minor like little tweaks on the financial due diligence. But with the roofs, How are you able to, did it impact your ability to get insurance at all?
No, insurance, especially on the coast, is absolutely crazy. That is a good point that you brought up because that is one surprise that happened when we went. The insurance rate dramatically increased. If you remember around that time, I think it was happening all over the country, but especially on the coast. And now that you mention it, that is another reason that we had to come back and retrade the deal, was the insurance and the roofs. So thanks for bringing that up. You're jogging my memory. Thank you so much.
Well, only because I've had some, assets that I've, well, obviously like the taxes have gone up, the insurance has gone up. 2023 has been a very interesting year. Well, let's get into actually like the financing for the deal. So I'm super curious, what kind of financing did you use for the deal? Public, private, recourse, non-recourse? What was the interest rate? That sort of details. And how did you figure this is? Are they two separate loans on the two different properties? Or are
Mhm.
they all,
Yeah. Yeah, so you would never know that it's two separate properties if you walk on there because it all looks like one asset. It was two separate sellers, so in two separate transactions, so we had to keep it all separate and two separate syndications, everything two separate loans. So we got bank financing on it. The interest rate was in the low sixes, if I remember right. And we felt obligated to the bank that brought it to us. And we have a great relationship. I mean, every bank says they want to build a great relationship with you. This bank really did it for us. Like this is for the first time, I think incredible relationship we have with this bank. So um we felt sort of, you brought us this, we wanna, do the lending with you. And it was really kind of a big loan for them. So they partnered with another bank to make it happen. And so bank financing, and it is recourse, unfortunately. And did I answer all your questions there?
were there any like lockout periods? Is the interest rate fixed? If so, for how
Yeah,
long?
it's a 5-year term and it is fixed rate debt. They want us to keep that loan with them forever. I know we'll at least do the initial phase and we'll probably go into agency after this. So
Okay. And is your plan to refinance out and hold or to sell the property? What's your business plan here?
it's really, we like to buy assets that produce lifetime cash flow, and get off the transaction treadmill. We like to do a lot of transactions, but we want to buy, and these should be assets that we should be able to hold forever and essentially increase value and refinance regularly to pull more equity out. So our game plan is how fast can we return investors' equity. So from the day we take down the deal, we want how fast can we get all that equity back out and get those infinite returns for our
And are
investors?
you
Yeah.
keeping your investors in whenever you return all their capital?
Yeah, we do. So we set these deals up, and that's a great question. We set these deals up the way that we would invest in a deal. So what we look for in other people's deals, this is the way we set them up. So we want to keep our ownership percentage throughout the entirety of the deal. We want to participate in all the tax benefits equally. We want monthly distributions. We want return of capital as quickly as possible. And yeah, so that's really it.
So how did you structure this with your limited partner investors for the capital raise? Like what kind of pref? Was there an IRR hurdle in here? Like how did this all work?
There's no hurdles. It's a 70-30 split. So 70% to the limited partners and 30% to the general partners. The general partners put in 10% of the equity just about on every one of our deals or close to it. We have a 7% pref on this deal. All of our deals either have a 7 or an 8% pref. So no hurdles other than that. Pretty straightforward. We like to keep it very simple.
Awesome. Okay, and then how many general partners are on the deal?
I think we have 6. There's a handful, yeah.
Okay. And so how did you organize the general partnership? What are the different roles, here?
Yeah, so obviously we have Sam, myself, and our partner Iggy. We come with the balance sheet and sign on the loan, the experience and net worth and liquidity. We obviously found the deal and put the deal together, help with everything regarding the deal. So we have other GPs that help with due diligence. Obviously, everyone helps with the equity raise. There's a lot of admin tasks, a lot of getting bids on amenities or roofs. So all these tasks, we have a whole page of tasks that are divvied up among the general partners to help out with.
Mm, mm. All right, all right. Well, kind of in wrapping up, I've got two questions for you. What was something that you thought would be easier on this deal that actually ended up being much harder? And then flip it on its head. What did you think would be harder on this deal that actually, quite honestly, ended up being easier?
So what was easier that ended up being harder? I would say the contract and actually doing the transaction. So our reputation, we try to make these things as easy and smooth as possible. We got great reputations with sellers and brokers in that regard. We're not trying to go to war with anyone. We're just trying to do a deal. That's it. So it was a little bit more tough on the initial seller to do the deal. I mean, they were just like really close cards to the chest and just tough to get information out of, and also be reasonable about the contract basically and getting the right tax allocations. Um, and then what was easier or harder that ended up being easier that I thought would be harder. So I thought the repositioning would be a lot harder and slower. So we planned on 18 months. Like I said earlier, we're about 80% of the way there already. It was quite easy to get rents up. People know the rates in this market and extremely happy to still be getting sort of a deal and with us opening up and adding a lot more value. So, that was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a little bit longer of a road to reposition this thing.
Well, John, thank you so much for being on the show today and sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. If people want to follow you and find out more about you, how can they do so?
Yeah, our company is called Lake City Equity. LakeCityEquity.com is the best place to reach out to me and see our team and see our deals, and look forward to connecting with anyone.
Excellent. All right. Well, John, thank you again for sharing your time with us here today, and we look forward to hearing about your future deals.
Thank you, Whitney. Thanks a lot.